to the best of our ability. And we do a great job in this district and in this community as a whole of really celebrating those extracurriculars, and we want to make sure that we continue to do so. We also looked at what are some opportunities for growth. And we really got a lot of feedback, and this is what we took to heart. And the school committee, really embraced a lot of these areas during the budget process. Around professional development for teachers. So investing, our strength is our people. Let's invest in them and build their capacity. Some of the resources, the Chromebooks, making sure we carve out time for collaboration and we align our curriculum. We're providing more support staff and we have translators available. So all of these opportunities for growth, we really wanted to make sure that we were taking that to heart, and we're drafting our plans moving forward to make sure that we're addressing these opportunities so we can continue to grow and offer the best education possible and the best experiences that we can for our students. And one thing that we've really talked about this year that we want to highlight is we do a great job of celebrating our athletics and our extracurriculars, and we need to do that, and we need to make sure that we continue to do that. And we want to make sure that this year we're also focusing on celebrating our high academic achievement. We have some kids who are doing unbelievable things in our schools and some teachers that are doing wonderful things. And so this year, we're really going to bring them forward. We'll have kids each month coming and talking about the wonderful things they're doing. And we want to make sure that we're celebrating those academic achievements as well. And so, again, last year we talked about this vision to guide our work and this idea of hope, and our really driving, making sure that this acronym of HOPE, or high expectations, optimism, personalized learning, and equity and access, is driving all the decisions that we make, and that we have hope for every student every day. So just a couple slides on these just to really hit the point home. These are two of our best and our brightest, Noah and Connie. And they have high expectations for themselves, their teachers have high expectations for them, and we want to think about having the same expectations for every student every day. They do wonderful things in our community through their Project 351, in the extracurricular activities, and in their academics, and we want to make sure that we're using them as as a role model for our younger kids and also for their peers. And so we want to make sure that every student has some of these opportunities that we have, the same regard that we hold our Project 351 ambassadors. I think about optimism is we really want to dive deep and say every student in our community, in our schools, can achieve at high levels, and making sure that no matter what they need for support, we're providing that to them, and keeping that positive, upbeat attitude, and making sure that we give them everything that they need. We want to really get to know our kids and personalize those learning experiences. So years ago, we talked about differentiation, and this really takes it to the next level. It gets to know every student as an individual, what they need, and we personalize the education for them so that they can achieve at their highest level. And then finally, equity and access. And so we want to make sure that we drive this home and that we're providing equitable opportunities and high expectations for every student. And we want to make sure that we're looking at what are some of the barriers to that access, and we're addressing them. And we really want to make sure that it truly means every single student. And so, we want to make sure that, our kids who are meeting expectations, we want them to exceed expectations. Our students who are partially meeting, we want to make sure that we provide them with the supports. And we really want to raise those for every student. Okay, so we have our HOPE acronym, and in our strategic plan we have two big areas that we focus on. One is building a community, and the three pillars of the strategic plan are effective communication, collaborative relationships, and community partnerships. So we want to make sure that we're creating our SMART goals and our district goals in order to align with the strategic plan. So this year, we really want to think about the power of alignment and making sure that our district goal is accessible to our school improvement plans, which we'll talk about, and you'll have the principals presenting to you likely in a couple of weeks. And we want to make sure that everything can align to this right down to our teacher goals and our goals in the classroom. So the first proposed SMART goal that we have is our professional practice goal around building a community. And by June of 2022, the Peabody Public Schools will build a strong and supportive community by, first, improving effective communication as measured by feedback that will be obtained through surveys, focus groups, and interviews of our students, staff, and families. We really want to make sure that we're communicating effectively, not only from the district office, but from the principals and from the individual teachers to our students and to our families. Next is improving collaborative relationship. And one of the big things that we're doing this year is we are creating professional learning communities. We've provided some professional development for that, and we want to make sure that our teachers have the opportunity to effectively participate in those professional learning communities so that they can collaborate and share best practices to really meet the needs of all of our students. And finally, improving community partnerships. And you know, we have some wonderful people in the community that want to partner with our schools. Last year that was a challenge, so this year we're putting a charge out to our principals of every school will increase the number of community partners they have by 2. And so if they do that, that's over 20 community partners that we would have new this year. And you know, we think it's an achievable goal, and we're very excited about doing that. The second area for our big focus is equity and access. And last year, these 3 buckets that you see on the screen said curriculum, student support, and social and emotional learning. So little tweaks based on what we learned over the course of the year is that we've updated curriculum to really focus on curriculum, instruction, and assessment. So really focusing on the teaching and the learning and the evidence of learning that we receive from the assessments that we do so that we can, you know, continue to meet the needs of our students. Before we focused on student support, as we come back from the pandemic, we really want to focus on student and staff support. And we know that we need to take care of our staff so that they can take care of our students. So we're doing a lot of thoughtful things this year to make sure that our staff has opportunities to collaborate with one another and they have the resources that they needed, you know, through that budget process, that the committee's thoughtful allocation of resources. We feel as our teachers have a lot more this year to be able to meet the needs of the students. And finally, social and emotional learning is really important, and we'll continue to do that as we come back from the pandemic. So our second SMART goal is our student learning goal focused on equity and access. And so again, we have 3 areas here. By June of 2022, the Peabody Public Schools will increase equity and access to high-quality educational opportunities for all students by improving our curriculum, instruction, and assessment practices as measured by at least 75% of all students meeting or exceeding expectations on state and district-wide assessments. So similarly, last year you saw a number of our principals brought data to the school improvement meetings that we had, and they were showing some data of learning loss, and our goal was to really meet the needs of our students. And so, you know, our goal is not just to meet expectations, but to exceed expectations, and that'll be a common theme as we celebrate academic performance this year. Next, we want to improve student and staff support, and we want to make sure that one of the things we saw last year is the number of students that were out of school, chronic absenteeism, and as well as the number of teachers. So we think that if we effectively support our teachers and our students, they'll be more likely to come to school, and they'll be more likely to be welcomed into those school environments. And so we're looking to see a 50% reduction in the number of staff and students identified as being chronically absent. And so that's absent 10% or more of the school days. So 18 days out of 180, that's a lot. And we want to make sure that our teachers have what they need so they can meet the needs of the kids and that the kids are coming to school. And finally, we want to improve social and emotional learning for all of our students as measured by a 25% increase of the number of students demonstrating proficiency on our CLIS rating scores. And those CLIS rating scores are part of an SEL grant that we got last year, and measuring, part of it is aligned with the self-manager piece of the vision of a graduate, as well as some additional indicators on the CASEL survey. So we really want to make sure we're taking into account our social and emotional learning of students. And so again, when we talk about the power of alignment, we want to make sure that our district goals are accessible to our principals and that they're aligned with the school improvement plan, and so that our goals as an administrative team can be aligned with our teachers and our specialists all the way down to our students. So we have the little metric on the right here of, you know, all of our different schools are walking in line, but we're all going towards a common goal and a common vision. So I'd like to stop there and ask if there's any questions about the district goals, and then we could have a discussion on that. And, you know, if the school committee, if it's the will of the committee, we could have a vote to adopt the district goals, and then those goals will work with principals to make sure that they're aligned on their school improvement plan.
Thank you, Dr. Vidala. Any questions on any of the items presented at this time? Okay. Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Vidala. This is a really good plan moving forward, and I appreciate what you've done with these SMART goals. One question I have regarding the CLIS testing, when does that data become available
So we test the students in the spring, and so it's less of a test and more of a survey. And so they do a rating scale on themselves. And so part of social emotional learning is that being reflective and really getting to know yourself so that you can know your strengths and know what you can do. So we really want to work with students around that and then being able to communicate that so they can be effective communicators.
Thank you. And is it all 12 grades, or is it more towards the older students?
We start in fourth grade.
Fourth grade.
Yep, so fourth grade and up.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Any other questions? Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, no, I concur with Ms. Dunn. Great job, Doc. Thank you for outlining this for us. I think it's a good place to start in the beginning of the school year, and I'd make a motion that we adopt the plan as you've outlined it.
Second.
Thank you. You've heard the motion by Mr. Hockman, seconded by Mrs. Dunn. Let's do a roll call vote on this, please. Oh, on the motion, Mrs. Dunn?
I have another question.
Okay.
The SMART goals for the admin team, teachers, and specialists, I would like to say the school committee should be setting some goals too in order to support that. And that's one of the items we've often talked about in the past, of being able to, work in conjunction with the processes. We should be able to have some duties there as well. And it's an unspoken duty, but it's always there that we would support you with this. But I think we need to have some written goals as well. So before you publish it, I think we ought to try to come up with a couple of assistive metrics on our part too that you could include in that, so we know what we should be doing as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Any other comments on the motion? Questions? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Hockman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunn?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Excellent, thank you so much. So, we really worked a lot over the summer with our administrative team and with, some of our teachers, really trying to make sure that these goals met the needs of our students. And so we do have, in your packet is the entry plan. It's a little bit more detailed and has some nice colorful pictures of our students in there. And so I'd like to post this on our website, send it out to our staff, and I'm going to send it out to families as well via email so they have that, because I do think it's important for us to be communicating with them, what our goals are. And then I just have one more item on my agenda, and this is about the optional COVID testing. So the state is offering 3 types of testing, and as a community and working in collaboration with our public health department, we've decided to participate in 2 of those. So the first one is the Test and Stay program. And I'm happy to report tonight that we will be beginning the Test and Stay program on Monday, September 20th. And so this allows for unvaccinated close contacts to remain in school if the student is not showing any symptoms. So what they would do is we've partnered with the state, and they will be sending us some staff. We already have some of the supplies. They were delivered here to the Higgins, and then we dispersed them out to all the schools. So we think that this is really an important opportunity for us to be able to keep kids in school. So for example, our elementary students are not old enough to be vaccinated. And so if we have a positive classmate and they're identified as a close contact right now, they would have to go home and quarantine. So if they're not showing any symptoms, they would be able to opt in. We sent out the consent forms for our staff and our students, and they could take a daily rapid test at the school. They report to the school in the morning. They take the daily test. They wait 15 minutes, and as long as that is negative, they get to stay in school. And so it's completely optional. Families do not have to participate if they don't want to. If a student is vaccinated, it's a middle or high school level, they don't have to quarantine. So that's one option for families if they don't want their child to quarantine, but we wanted to provide another option as well. We know that many families are still struggling with the decision for their younger ones, and right around 12, 13, 14, some people, we know that's a personal decision, and we want to support families in the decisions that they make. So this is another option to keep kids in school. The second option that we have is symptomatic testing. So last year, if a student had a sore throat and they reported that they would be sent home for 48 hours and have to get a negative COVID test. And so now, if a student or a staff member who's exhibiting a symptom can go to the nurse's office, and we're training our nurses, they can do, with consent, again, this is completely optional, but as opposed to going home, they could take a rapid test. And so it's a shallow nasal swab, and then in 15 minutes, we would know if they're positive or negative. If the test is negative, they get to go back to class and they can stay for the day. If the test is positive, we would ask them to go to their pediatrician or their doctor's office and get a PCR test just to confirm that it wasn't a false positive. So we're very excited about these two. We've had a lot of questions around pooled testing, and we know that that is something that is of concern for many of our families, so we are not participating in the pool testing initiative right now. It's not something that we're looking to do, but we'd like to roll out these two because we feel like it can keep kids in school. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee. I know there's been a lot of parents that have been asking questions, and we want to make sure that we take them individually and really make sure that they feel confident in the work that we're doing.
Great, thank you, Dr. Vidal. Any questions? Comments, Mr. Hockman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dr. Vidala. Thank you for giving this information, and thank the committee. I want to thank the committee and your administration, Dr. Vidala, for continuing to give students and families choices. I think it's important that we continue to do that, and opting into some of these programs is important because if kids aren't in school, it's more difficult for them to learn, so I appreciate that. I do have one question with regard to the test and stay program. It'll start out as one question, it may lead to more. Is there any data collection that's going on with this, or is it simply just a result, and if the result is negative, the student goes back to class? If the result is positive, then we ask the student to have some further testing?
So we do record the results of those because they have been identified as close contacts, so we are making sure, because they do want to track if you are a close contact and you do receive a positive result down the road. They want to see if there's transmission going on in schools. Last year we had very little to no transmission because everyone's wearing masks, and we want to make sure that we are tracking that. So it is 100% voluntary and 100% confidential, but there is a data tracking. We want to make sure that we have the important metrics to be able to make our decisions as we go forward.
As I suspected, there would be a second question. I appreciate that, contact tracing is important and it's significant to help curb the virus. So other than the local contact tracing that I suspect would go to our Board of Health or Health Director, I guess I'm more concerned if there's any information being released to the state or to any other state or federal agencies beyond Peabody that you're aware of.
So I can look into it a little bit more and work with our health department and bring that information back. I don't want to speak out of turn because I don't know the full details of it, but I'll definitely get that information to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and if we'll follow up. Thank you.
All right, great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Any other questions, Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Vidala, on the test and stay program, I know this question has come up in other communities, and I don't know if we have a decision yet here. But one of the things I've seen people write about was some communities, the parents have to sign a release to allow their child to participate in that program at the time that they call the family. Other communities, parents are able to sign a release prior to the incident so that they can give permission for their child to be in that. Have you made a decision on which type of permission you were going to follow through with?
Yes, so we would fall into the second category. We're asking parents who are interested to opt in via the online form that we sent, and they can opt in, and that's all they have to do is they have to do it once. And then we would notify them if their child were to be tested. And if people are wondering about it and they're not sure, the form is still up there. They can opt in at any point. One of the things is you can't opt in right immediately. So if your child was identified as a close contact and you hadn't given the consent yet, your child would go home, and then we could work with you around future consent. But we're asking families to give consent now so that if their child is identified as a close contact, that we could allow them to stay in school.
Very good.
And they only have to do it once.
Yeah, okay. That's very similar to what we've always had with the nurses, that if you were going to allow your child to be given Tylenol at the nurse's office, you could sign at the beginning of the year instead of coming down to pick them up and give them the Tylenol yourself. So that's good. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Dr. Vidala.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go, public participation. Is there anyone that we have joining us that has their hand raised or would like to speak?
We do not have anyone with a hand raised.
Okay, anybody in our audience that would like to speak? Okay, seeing no one. Let's go to written communications. We do not have any today, so let's go right to subcommittee reports. Education Subcommittee. Mr. Miko?
Nothing to report.
Finance Subcommittee.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Mrs. Carpenter. School Safety.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Olympio, thank you. Athletics and Wellness.
Nothing new to report at the moment. I did intend to schedule one tonight. My schedule didn't allow it, so I'm aiming for 2 weeks from now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arnottis. Quality and Standards.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Parent and Student Advisory Boards. Mrs.
Thank you,
Dunn.
Mr. Chairman. We're working on a schedule for the Parent Advisory Board. Just have to get a list of all of the Parent Advisory Board members and then schedule a meeting around PTO meetings. So that's coming, and the goal is to have one by the end of this month so the Parent Advisory Board members can meet Dr. Vidala. As far as the Student Advisory Board, I spoke with Mr. Magno, and he explained that he is putting into place all kinds of, they're trying to straighten out everything to get the Student Advisory Board elected, to get the Student Council elected, to get the class councils. All of that is going on right now because, of course, it is the beginning of school. And because last spring with COVID, that really interfered with the ability to have the normal elections and organization for this year. So I spoke with him about being able to meet with the advisory board members to the school committee because MASC is again going to offer training for the students. He was thrilled to hear that. So I'm going to stay in contact with him to provide that information to the new student advisory board members.
Excellent. Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Building and Grounds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had an opportunity last week to take a tour of the high school with Principal Magno and Dr. Vidala. And during that tour, I kind of noticed some things that need to be, or I'd like to have addressed, and I plan on having a Building and Grounds Subcommittee meeting before our next school committee meeting, I think 2 weeks from today. Mr. Arnottis, if we can coordinate time so that we can each have a meeting. But some of those areas of concern were the condition of D House. The floors have some, I think we all know D House is already well beyond its life expectancy. There are several areas where there are tiles missing on the floor. Doors I don't think are closing properly, so there might be some safety concerns. Other areas that were a little alarming were the locker rooms, the weight room, some other issues in the auditorium around lighting and speaker placement for safety concerns. And then at the meeting, I'd also like to talk about some elementary school playgrounds that we identified in the last a few meetings ago that could use some addressing, and the future location of the administrative offices for the school department. One thing I do know that did occur, I think this past week, there were some issues with the PA system at the Carroll School. It's my understanding that a technician has been contacted and that matter will be addressed within the next couple of days. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. I think you're right on with those items. Mr. Arnottis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Hoffman. This is actually timely. I was having a discussion with someone earlier today, rather. It was brought to my attention there has been some leakage coming through the roof onto the auditorium stage. Is that something that was noticed? Yeah.
Through the chair to Mr. Arnottis, thank you. That was one of the things I meant to identify tonight too. There's some leakage not only in the stage area, but in, if you're standing on the stage left in the upper balcony with some seating, there's a leak starting up there as well. So that may be of the most immediate concern, and we'll hopefully get that addressed shortly.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you, Mr. Arnottis. I appreciate you for reminding me.
Excellent, thank you. Mrs. Dunn, then Mrs. Carpenter.
Could I ask a question about the roof at the auditorium? Can we look into which area in the high school had been repaired with the roof? And if that area was repaired, to find out what the warranty was on that section?
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Mr. Hockman, do you
Yeah.
know the answer on that?
No, I don't, but through you to Ms. Dunn, do you recall, was Dave Keniston the business manager at the time that was repaired?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I honestly think it may have been, well, Dave Keniston may have been the business manager. No, it wasn't Dave Keniston, and it was Tim Healy was the
Right.
facilities manager at that time. But there have been so many different sections of the roof repaired, I honestly can't remember if that was one that was taken care of. I thought it was, though. So I'm really disappointed about the condition at the auditorium, because that floor on the stage has been damaged by the leak. And that's something that really impacts on the ability to host, plays, not just for our students, but for other people, dance recitals, all of that is impacted now.
Mrs. Carpenter?
Thank you. While we're on the subject, I did go up to the high school over I think it was Friday night, and I had a couple of concerns about the grounds outside as well, that I think we need some clarification on as to who's responsible for them and how we can get them fixed. Few of the things were the signage that is right by the, leading into the driveway to the hockey rink, well, the skating rink, and it's just empty. It's just a frame. It's gone. I will say there was a time on this committee that one member who's no longer here fought for a good year just to have it positioned properly, and now there's nothing even in it to give direction. The lights all the way down Ferry Road, the whole way from the one end to the other, it's complete pitch black. There are no lights on at all. I know we have a lot of outdoor evening events coming up, football games, and I will say for the people and the kids that have to walk along that road, it is complete darkness. We also have a light pole by the visitor parking that I believe was knocked down by a plow last year. And just in general, the parking lot lights. So I'm kind of curious as to who's responsible for those, when the principal puts that report in or that request. And I do think, in addition to everything that the committee has brought up already, very timely, sensitive matters that need to be handled. And I just think, through the chair to Dr. Vidal, if you could just maybe give some clarification. Has work orders been put in? Do we need to assist in any way, or can we help?
Thank you. So I think this is very helpful. I know work orders have been put in, and I think, I've talked to a number of members of the committee and to the mayor as well about, identifying maybe a punch list and being able to go through it so that we can make sure that it's a timely manner. I think we're in this transitional phase where maintenance and facilities is on the city side. They work very closely with us, and we just have to make sure that the communication and the follow-through so that we know when these projects are being done and when we get updates timely. So I do think this is a good opportunity for us to have a discussion about it. I think the Building and Grounds Subcommittee doing some walkthroughs and creating a punch list, and then if we can create a process to be able to communicate back out to the committee about when things are getting done would be helpful. And I think, now that last year a lot of our focus was on COVID and focus was crisis management. But now I think we really have an opportunity to look at our facilities and say, how do we work together with the city and with the facilities department? I know they're hiring some new people, but creating a process where we can report out regularly about that time, I think would be very helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Vidala. If you could add those lists, I believe you're going to be talking about it at your subcommittee. And if we could get a report back maybe at the next school committee meeting as to how these are going to be followed up and if there's any assistance or anything that we have to discuss to try to move them along budget-wise, anything like that, just to help. And I appreciate everyone in the city. I know it's been tough and, things aren't immediate all the time. But I think more importantly, is letting us know who to report them to and where you go to ask for help and assistance and to work together with these things, because we really just want to make sure they're taken care of. So thank you.
Great, excellent comments. Okay, next committee report, Special Education Parent Advisory Board, Mr. Olympio.
Yes, I'm planning on, I haven't posted yet, but I'm looking at Monday, October 4th for the first CPAB meeting, hopefully Dr. Vidal and Ms. Chioda can attend 6 o'clock. Looking forward to seeing the parents again in person, and, yeah, so I'm excited about that, and we'll, get back to our monthly meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olympio. City Council and Legislative Delegation.
Nothing new to
Mr.
report, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnottis. Redistricting Ad hoc Subcommittee, Mr. Hockman.
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay, any new business before we adjourn? Our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, September 28th, 2021, 7 PM right here in the Higgins Library. And no further business. Motion to adjourn is approved. Thank you, everyone.